It's only if you change the system that that can be changed. Yeah. What is that the equal rights? But did you?
Well, I must say that we're a pretty long way off from that. You know that in many areas in the country, I don't know what the situation is in Iowa, but there are city councils that have sought to pass civil rights bills for including provisions which provide for no discrimination by reason of sexual orientation. And we've had a big struggle in New York and have not passed that city bill, though it has been passed in a number of cities throughout the country. The reason I propose that we consider it an amendment to the Civil Rights Act is because I feel that it is essential that there be a protection against discrimination of any group of people by reason of race, sex, national origin, religion, or sexual orientation. I think that a person's right to a job, a person's right to use public accommodations, a person's right to housing should be fundamentally guaranteed. And I don't think that the country or the Congress has yet fully understood the issues involved in the existence of people who choose a different sexual orientation. But I think that the time is developing and there is more of an understanding growing each day, and as the movement of gay rights continues, there will be more understanding and more support for the bill. But at this point, there isn't much support for the bill, though a number of congressmen have indicated their desire to co-sponsor it. So that's the answer to that. Yeah. Thank you very much. Same to you. Lashana Tova. That means Happy New Year in Hebrew. Yeah. Well, I don't know why you feel like you're coming and going or anything like that. I'm not too clear what that means. My opinion of affirmative action is that it is the very minimal remedy to discrimination that has gone on for many, many years in this country. I mean, you have an enormous amount of discrimination against women and minorities, and since I'll address you as a woman at this time, women, for example, in the educational arena have been discriminated against on the campuses in a way that is quite remarkable. The tenure, there's discrimination in tenure, there's discrimination in hiring, in promotion, in salaries, and many of the affirmative action cases that are pending, and they're not moving fast enough because there has been a total failure to really deal with it vigorously in this administration, affect those women across this country, and the campuses have been the most actively involved in seeking affirmative action. So I don't know why you should feel coming or going. If you feel anything about yourself as a person and your identity, you should struggle and try to make available to you whatever measures you possibly can to remedy historic discrimination. Without that, you're not going to be an individual. You're not going to be a full participant in society. And so I'm totally in favor of affirmative action for women, for minorities. And, you know, this is a big country, and we could have enough universities and enough law schools and enough jobs for everybody. It's a matter of where we put the money. And the issue is not if I get a job, then the other fellow is going to be thrown out of a job. The issue is, are we going to put the money for the human needs of people, or are we going to continue to put it in the weapons of destruction? Are we going to continue to have special privileges in this country for a few people? That's the basic issue. In the meantime, until we can remedy that long-range discrimination against all Americans, those who have been particularly deprived, those who have been shut out economically, have an absolute right to expect the total society to deal with their problems by affirmative action, to remedy the discrimination against them. And that's what affirmative action is about. And I'll tell you something else. There hasn't been enough of it, and I'm for more of it. Well, the problem with the multinational corporations is that they are wrecking our economy. I mean, among other things. There's a few other things that's wrecking it. But they are going abroad. They are exploiting resources and people in other countries. They are then bringing their products, and they are getting all kinds of tax shelters abroad by running abroad, and they are then bringing these products back here to compete with American labor, throwing American labor and industry out of work. And so there's got to be much more stringent control of the multinational corporations. The last trade bill that came through the House did not really effectively deal with that problem, and it's a very enormous problem for us to confront. And you raised a very important question. It has had a great deal to do with throwing a lot of workers out of work in this country, and it's an intolerably cynical, hypocritical situation which has to be regulated by this government and by the Congress of the United States. Yeah, all right. You and then you. No, go ahead, let her finish, then I'll get to you again. Well, it's very hard to know. I've been very involved with the transportation issue. I've been seeking to and have been very involved in authoring in my committee with, matter of fact, with the rural members of my committee, a mass transportation bill, which will also provide for rural transportation. A lot of money for rural transportation, not only for urban areas. And it was a $20 billion bill, and was cut by President Ford. Pressure in the House to $11 billion, and they're now sort of holding back from doing anything. The existing amount of money for rural transportation is not very great, and I have felt that a great boost could come to that from this bill, which many labeled an urban bill. I had not heard that they were going to freeze the money for urban transportation, though I must indicate to you that there is an impression that I get that this administration is going absolutely haywire in false economic concepts of how you fight inflation, that you fight inflation by cutting government spending. And there is no evidence of that. As a matter of fact, if you see the graph of what has happened in government spending from about 1964 till now, matter of fact, we have probably the most balanced budget we've had in a long time, and the inflation is the highest that it's ever been. So we are confronting this McKinley philosophy, which we have to overcome. You heard about McKinley. He existed some time ago. It was an administration many years ago, a Republican administration. In any case, I mean, that just happens to be, but I don't know what that specifically is, but I will look into it because I am very concerned with that issue. I feel that there isn't enough monies for rural transportation. Well, I know. That's why in the bill that I talked of, there was about $1 billion which was going to be allocated to all kinds of rural transportation. We made a computation. We figured out the number of counties in this country and that need about 4 or 5 buses for each county, which would enable the seniors to get to health centers, to get to community centers, to go in to see a movie, to go to town, all of the things that I'm very familiar with because I argued those provisions on the floor. I supported and fought for the rural provisions. I know what the problem is. It's ridiculous to have these community centers, to have these health centers, if you can't bring people to them. And I can't agree with you more. And this is one of the reasons why we did form a coalition, by the way, between the rural and the urban members of Congress, at least the young rural members of Congress, around a transportation bill, which was a mass transportation bill, which most people say is a bill to help us save the 35-cent fare in New York City. But we had this major provision to provide the buses for the counties throughout this great country of ours. And I really think that half the people in the rural areas themselves in the Congress were not aware, which sort of shocked me, of the tremendous need that you referred to. And you have a strong ally in this issue. Well, if any information, you ought to get in touch with your congressman about it, and I'd be glad to discuss it with him, because frankly, no, oh, well, surely, yeah, but okay. Nevertheless, you should. But I'd be glad to work with your congressman on this issue, because it's something I'm very involved in the Public Works Committee on transportation. That gentleman over there, yeah. Well, I think that I have some hope that we will return to Congress a more progressive Congress than we have now by November. I don't know that it'll be that much better, but I think it will be somewhat better. And I think that there will be an effort made to deal with the social programs more effectively. The only thing that discourages me a little bit is the way Congress is knuckling under on this business of, cutting government spending. Because where are they cutting it? They're going to cut it, I just gave you mass transportation as an example. They're going to cut it on programs of education. They'll cut it on the social programs that you referred to. So I'm a little concerned at this point. But I hope that but we will bring in the 94th Congress, that will be the next one, some new people that will help give us numbers to be able to sustain the fight on that and overcome any vetoes. So again, the message is to get some people in there that can make a difference. 2 more questions. I'm losing my audience, and I can't tolerate that. Okay. Well, there is a campaign reform bill that passed the House and one that passed the Senate. It's not the whole ball game, but it's the first step. And after all, these guys are tough incumbents, and they're not interested in promoting insurgents against them. So it's a tough one. And the public pressure has really been enormous and has moved them. And I don't, I think we have to have public financing. Not until we can produce the kind of money out of, $1 or $2 per taxpayer, will we really have democratic government. There's no question about it. So those steps that have been taken in both House and Senate bills are the beginnings on public financing, some little matching public financing, and some limitations on expenditures. I think we can pass a bill. I think we will before we adjourn. And you should say hooray, only we want more. That's all I can tell you. We have that one bill in each house. I think we'll reconcile our differences, and it'll... I didn't, yeah, go ahead. Well, it's a good question. That's the question I've been posing here all night. What I'm saying is that I think we can make it work. Anyhow, I don't know what our choice is. I mean, it's maybe not a great democracy, but it's the only democracy we've got. Well, I'm trying in my way to change it. I don't see at the moment any other alternative that is realistic at this moment. And therefore, what I have committed myself to by coming in, running for Congress, I'm an activist that came out of the movements of change. I came out of the peace movement, out of the women's rights movement, civil rights and civil liberties movement. But I feel that this country is great and the people in it are great, and that the people are entitled to have a response. And I see no other alternative at this time but to try to make what you call a bourgeois democracy more responsive, and to prevent it from going down the drain. I mean, we've just been through that kind of situation. If you think, you know, it's not working, we almost were in the position of losing it entirely. Now, you may not think that's important, but I think it was important to stop it from being taken over, to have prevented a coup d'etat, okay? Because that's what President Nixon was all about. It wasn't just a little game that was going on there with those little tapes. They wanted to hear how their voices were sounding. It was a serious political and economic mechanism of control, seeking to take over the democracy in this state, in this great country of ours. And frankly, I think as bad as some of the conditions are in this country, for many Americans, particularly now, with unemployment and terrible inflation and the disregard of the elderly and the problems of the poor and so on, that as difficult as they were, had that control been permitted to go on, we would have had a police type of state which would have made conditions much worse. And so I think it was essential for us to fight for this bourgeois democracy. I think it still is essential for us to fight for it, to strengthen it and to make it work for people. And if it doesn't work, and if there are other alternatives that come around, I'll observe it and be part of it just like anybody else. But in the meantime, I think this is where it is, and we've got to fight for this democracy and make it work for all the people. And good night. I love you.